Hello everybody, James here, and it is Ask Dutch Anything. And before I do all the plugs and everything like that, I've just been regaling Dutch with 20 minutes of stories from my life that you quite like the stories of, but we won't say what they are. No?
What's that?
Don't worry about it. I'm just boring Dutch with my personal life stories. Right, okay then. We'll do the plugs, the quick version of the plugs, Pro Wrestling Tees, Facebook, Storytime with Dutch Mantell. I've got 2 books, one on Owen Hart. A picture there, in fact. One on The Rock. Dutch has got 2 as well. Storytime with Dutch is the name of the podcast, damn it. The World According to Dutch and Tales from a Dirt Road. Dirty Dutch Mantell with 2 L's at gmail.com. To get signed versions of them, unsigned, you go to Amazon, and also Dutch has diplomas as well. There's one for Richard Wood. That should be going to you quite soon. Hopefully.
There you go. You know who Richard Wood is?
Nope.
I think I've already sent him that. Hey, this is the bad thing about going in the hospital. Your accounting goes to crap. Now I'm trying to pull orders together, and I think I just about got most of them. But I had like 200 back orders. And for the first month, I was recovering. I couldn't remember anything. And I'm just start remembering things now that happened when I was in the hospital. So it was hey, I could have passed on, folks, into the great beyond, and you'd have missed all these stories.
And you never would have got your merch.
And you never would have got your merch. You could have written to my email address. Of course, it would be a ghost address by that time. Nobody would be answering it, and so. But I am writing my 3rd book, and I'm in the process of that. I'm gonna take some of my stories that I've written before and try to update them too, and this will cover a lot of things in my personal life, not necessarily my wrestling life, but hoping to have it out. I would like to say by Christmas, because it won't be out by Christmas.
I think it should be the perfect time. Most people buy it. If you can get it out for November, like early November, that's 6-7 shopping weeks. Perfect.
Yeah, that is true. So, but I am in the process of writing it, and I need a name for it. I wanted like, you ever heard the Book of Eli? You ever heard that name? There's a movie made of it.
Yeah.
You ever see that movie?
I've never seen the movie. I've heard of it.
Oh, it's great. It's a great movie. And I thought about the Book of Dutch, but it sounds almost too biblical, I think.
Why don't you call it Stone Cold Steve Austin, My Story? And have a picture of Steve Austin on it.
Yeah, that'd be good. And there's nothing in it. It's all about Undertaker.
Smashing Chris Canyon's head into the chair.
And I said, well, I told you I had trouble remembering shit. So, okay, let's get going.
Okay, then. We have got plenty of questions. And if you want to write in a question to ask us.
Okay, I got a message this morning.
Yes.
That verified what I said, the greatest podcast ever that we just did. And they said, you didn't lie about it. It was the greatest podcast you've ever done, you guys.
That was Storytime with Dutch Mantell, episode 104, the best damn podcast we've ever done. Dutch predicted it at the beginning, and at least one person thinks it was true, and hopefully more of you did as well, and we'll keep on applying ourselves, let's say. But for this one, fan questions. And the email you need is questionsfordutch@gmail.com. We weren't doing it last week due to internet issues, and, the sun was really nice and had got a nice tan.
Let's tell the truth why we didn't do it last week. You were in Greece, sunning.
Like a lizard.
I was here slaving away on our podcast, and you were out taking a vacation.
What were you doing for the podcast last week?
Thinking about it. I was thinking a lot about the podcast and questions. I was thinking about that too.
Fairness, you did provide a lot of questions and topics and stuff, some of which we're actually going to use for future episodes, like Ric Flair's upcoming biopic with The Rock. But we were not talking about that. We'll forget Flair stuff for now. We've done enough Flair for 1 week. But,
you got me going now.
No. We'll leave Flair out. So, questionsfordutch@gmail.com. So many of you wrote in. We got a double dose because we didn't do one last week, so we've picked some of the best questions we possibly can. There's a University of Dutch cap while I say that as well. And the first person to write in, this was on the last asked Dutch anything, and we didn't get around to it, so we're starting with this one. Kenny, Little Rock, Arkansas. Dutch, how bad was the Soma use in the 1990s, and when did they start getting popular in the wrestling business? Thank you for the show.
Somas. That was when did they get popular? They got popular as soon as they went out. As soon as they came on the market, they were popular with wrestlers. But what Somas would do, they would put you to sleep, and a sound sleep. So, and were they misused? Yes, of course they were misused, and I don't know if they were only any overdoses on them. I guess they probably were, but if you took like 2 or 3 of them, they would knock you out for like 8 hours. Of course, others, I've seen guys staggering around, and they would just keep taking them. They would come to, and then they take another pill and knock them out. Yes, Somas. I'm trying to think of the year, probably in the late 80s, I think. And that's how I heard about them. Of course, I was taking my cues from the other guys. See, I didn't even know what a Soma was. I wasn't a drug user like that. So the farthest I ever went with drugs was maybe some marijuana, some weed, and drinking, and that's about as far as I went. But these other guys, they were shooting up and they doing everything. And I'm saying, God, stay away from me. But
did you ever try Soma? Yeah, did you ever try it once?
I've tried them, but like one, and it made me a little drowsy, and it relaxes you. So I guess the prevailing myth was, you take one, it makes you feel pretty good and relaxes you. So if you take 2, it might do twice that and make you feel better. So, but I remember on a trip one time with Buddy Landell, he took a couple of pills, and we was on this 3-hour trip. And he didn't take too many, but he woke up right when we got to the place we needed to be. And of course, you don't wake up all, sharp and everything. It takes a few minutes for it to wear off. But it was a really heavily used drug.
Was it legal? How did you get them? Was it just like you just go to the pharmacy or something?
When I first heard about them, I'd already heard about them. I was in Puerto Rico. I mean, Puerto Rico keeps popping up. You could just go down to the drugstore and say, give me 100 Somas. And they'd give you 100 Somas without a prescription. It is a prescription drug. And they give you 100 Somas, or how many you wanted. So if I was in the Soma business, I could have wrapped up if I'd have wanted to, but I didn't, because they were used quite frequently by the guys.
When did they go out of fashion? Do you know? Was it late 90s, early 2000s, something like that? I mean, I don't know how prevalent they were in the indies.
Probably as soon as the next drug came in, it had a more of a kick. I really don't know.
Yeah, I think one of the famous deaths related, I think it was Soma related, was Louis Piccoli. But I think he was one of those people who would take too many and then plop his head into his food and that kind of thing, I guess. So, yes, quite prevalent.
Remember we talked about Eddie Gilbert?
We did.
Eddie Gilbert, they said he died from a drug overdose. I think he had a heart attack, to tell you the truth. But he was taking them, and he'd be eating, and his head would get like this and down to where he's finally his head was almost in his plate. And one night I had to move over. I'm watching him, and I just moved his plate out of the way, and his head kept going, and his head went all the way down to the table. And then when he woke up, I slid his plate back, and this is like an hour or two later. I slid his plate back, and he went, "Wow, I thought I ate this." And then he started eating. So he was fine by then.
Probably wondering why his food was cold. Right, we'll move on then. John says, hello, James and Dutch. I hope you're both well. We are. My question for Dutch is, did you know Adam Bomb? Do you think he was misused in the WWF? I always felt that he could do more with him. The Chronics could have had good feuds as a tag team. That's the WCW one with Crush, Bryan Adams. But Vince did not seem interested in them either. What does Dutch think is the reason for them not being pushed more? So, Chronic is a different one. We're going to stick with Adam Bomb, Brian Clark. I think he may have been in Smoky Mountain at the same time you were as well.
Yeah, I think he was. I know him. Not well, but I know him. What was it he used better? I don't know. It was probably the creative just didn't have anything. They say we don't have anything for you, which means that, well, what's he there for? If you got a big physical specimen like Adam Bomb, you'll find something for him. But again, we're back to storyline. You know, he can go out there and just beat guys, power bomb them all day long. Don't mean he can draw any money or sell any tickets. Give him a story because he looked the part, and let's do something with him. So yes, he could have been pushed. I agree with you, but they didn't. And why didn't they do it? I think the blame here lies in creative, not in Adam Bomb. He was doing what he was instructed to do, and if they don't want him to do anything, then he can't do anything.
They had someone who looked, maybe not looked, but you know what I mean, like not too dissimilar to Adam Bomb, who was taller and had friends in higher places, and he was called Kevin Nash. So I guess, you know, you've got a bigger version of Adam Bomb there to push, I suppose.
Well, I think Nash was a better salesman than Adam Bomb was.
Better interview, definitely.
Yeah, and I think, see, one thing a wrestler has to do is sell himself. He has to sell himself not only to the fans watching his performances on TV, he has to sell himself to the creative team and the booker. If you can do that, that's half the battle. Then the other half is up to you. And I think Kevin was where he excelled, and he got himself in that position.
We shall move on. George Carl, Clearwater, Florida, your old friend. Hello, Dutch and James. We've all seen countless matches with the heel reaches into this tights to pull out a foreign object. We rarely get a look at what this object might be. In fact, we know it sometimes we don't actually see anything, but we have the perception that something is there. What kind of object would you find hidden in somebody's tights? And sometimes it was easy to figure out that Abdullah had a fork or, you know, the Sheik had a pencil. But what would we find in the tights of Dutch Mantell?
Well, I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I think James knows what I'm going to say. I had a leftover meal from a Taco Bell. I stuffed it down my trunks, and I was looking for it, and I was throwing that out, and I would have old receipts left over from I tried to do some accounting, one day before I went in the ring. But usually it would be something like, it could be powder. You reach in, powder was good because you couldn't see the outline of it. And so you get the powder and, like this. And whoop. I really like to use the powder. Or it could be a pair of nuts, but you'd have to watch how you put them in there because you could see the outline of them. And things like that. That's what I would use, because I couldn't put a bullwhip in there because it was too big. But the powder was actually good. We used to do a deal where we'd pull the powder out, and while we're shaking it down, the guy would kick your hand. And he'd go in your own face. Oh, my God. And then you walk around, and I walked around. I was in a tag match. I walked around, and my partner came up to me. You okay? I slammed my partner. And then the guy, good finish. So, That's when the baby faces went over. See, finishes like that is I enjoyed doing because the people liked them. You get a bit, and it was new at the time, and so. But that's what I would have in my trunks. Not a lot.
Did you ever do the donut hold?
The what?
So apparently it's called the donut hold, so I gather, which is essentially, or donut hole, not hold.
What is it? Tell me what it is.
Well, that's exactly it. It's nothing. So you reach into your tights pretending that you've got an object, but you've got nothing.
Yeah.
And then, and then you hit somebody, and then apparently on certain occasions you do it so many times and you put it in a different. Not that there's anything, but then you forget where you've put it or pretended to put it, and then you just reach onto your knee pad and then forget where it is, and
then you can't find it.
Yeah.
That's a good spot. Yeah, we would do that all the time. And back when I first started, all you had to do was just turn your back to the referee and you get in the corner and just start there. Oh my God, here they come. They were screaming and hollering. So, but that's the beauty of it. Now you get to see. I worked for the fans. Sometimes I didn't work for the match. I worked for the fans. Whatever they were buying is what I was selling. So that was my attitude.
Next question. Jesse says, I'm sure a lot of aspiring wrestlers and other talent watch your show. So what advice could you give them to be able to say things like, I ain't doing it, when things don't feel right to you, and still be sought after and respected? Thanks, boys. I appreciate your consistency. I mean, you say that. I mean, we didn't do this episode last week, but normally we're consistent. But there you go.
Now, the question is, what was the question?
How do you get out of doing something but still retain respect in the eyes of the boys and the promoter?
Well, first of all, you got to have respect going into it. So if they want you to do something, and just tell them that anytime they wanted me to do something I didn't feel comfortable with, I says, you got to make them think it's their idea. You said, I got a better idea. And you give them the idea, and they may not even be sold on their own idea. They said, "Oh, that's good. That's good. Do that. Do that. Do that." But if it was something that make you look really, that would make you look bad or wouldn't help you, yeah, you're kind of need to speak up and say, "Can we do something else, really? Because that makes me this, this, and this." You got to justify everything you suggest. And you have to have respect going into it. See, now, if you're just a guy off the street, you're just filling in for one night, or you just started, you can't start that the first night. Because then they said, well, this guy's going to be a chronic bitcher, and he's going to bitch and not like anything we give him, which is a kind of a bad halo around your head. So you got to use a little bit of, you got to be a politician. You got to use a little bit of tact, whatever you do. But when I used to have an idea, I would give it to them in such a way that they would think that was their idea and they would like it, and then we could go do it. And we would come out, seriously, the things I changed, we came out much, much better at the end of it than what they had planned.
Matthew has written in and said he wants to know about the time Robbie McAllister of the Highlanders appeared on screen at a TNA TV taping in March of 2008 during WrestleMania weekend in Orlando, when he was on the Raw roster at the time. Do you think that Robbie McAllister deserved to be shown on TV and get fired shortly after over the incident? Also, what was the backstage reaction from others such as yourself and Jeff and Dave Zahardi to this? So, Robbie McAllister, he was in a Scottish tag team.
The Highlanders, right?
The Highlanders, yeah. And he just came off his own back and sat in the crowd, got filmed and got fired.
Well, I remember when this happened. They said, hey, the guy is out there sitting in the crowd watching the matches. And I forgot who said, well, let's show him. Let's show him on camera.
So this wasn't pre-planned?
No, it wasn't pre-planned. And so they showed him on camera, and I think he got fired the next day. It was a pay-per-view, right?
Yeah, this is around. This was a TV taping, but this was WrestleMania weekend in Orlando.
Yeah.
So he was in town.
So, and I didn't know they had shown him to later. And I don't know why they showed him, because I knew it was going to cause him problems. So, and then I heard he got fired. And I said, well, I was right. So the guy came over because I guess he has a love for wrestling and just wanted to see what was going on. And I don't know why they didn't invite him in the back, because that may have been, well, it couldn't have been any worse for him. He got fired. I think being shown on camera was the end game for them. You can't be a WWE talent and all of a sudden be filmed sitting in the crowd for another company like TNA. Yeah, I hate it happened for him, and I think he should have used better judgment. And I think our people, whoever ordered us get a shot of him, I think they should have used a little bit better judgment too.
Says here that he lost his $5,000 WrestleMania paycheck due to the appearance, but later in an interview he said, quote, I was very unhappy in WWE, and in retrospect I think it was kind of my way to get fired. So he was...
But he lost $5,000?
Yeah, maybe he was going to appear at WrestleMania in one of like the Battle Royal or an undercard match or something like that, or a dark match, so he cost himself a few grand there.
Well, I don't. Well, he's saying it, so he knows more about it than I do. But I'm sure he was unhappy there, because why else would he show up? But I didn't hear he asked for a job. I never heard that. But he couldn't have come over there and asked for a job. He was in violation of his contract anyway.
Yeah,
because he couldn't even be around. His contract forbid him from being around a competing company. And I think he was in violation of it just for showing up. So I don't know. I wish it hadn't happened, because I think it was in bad taste for everybody.
Says also that TNA Impact, Robbie was shown in attendance, as you know, in the Impact Zone, and was shown on camera under his real name to prevent a lawsuit, a trademark infringement kind of a thing there.
So they knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Put his real name up there.
Yeah, they did. His real name is...
What's his real name?
Robbie Derek Graham Couch. His real name, Robbie.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. Right, we will move on. Bagzed from Kurdistan, Turkey. So I'm very close to there, in fact. Hey, Mr. Mantell, recently. Hey, Mr. Mantell, I hope you're doing well. I'm particularly interested in the career and impact of Fit Finlay. As someone who has worked closely with many wrestling legends, I would love to hear your thoughts on his contributions to the industry, both as a performer and behind the scenes. Could you share any memorable experiences or anecdotes about working with Fit?
Well, when I met Fit, he was an agent, producer for WWE. And what I liked about Fit, and I didn't really know him that well, but he would get in the ring with all the talent that was in his segment. Say it was a tag match. He would actually get in the ring and he would say, listen, when this happens, you need to be here. You need to be over there. He would go through every segment and every aspect of that match so they wouldn't screw it up. And if somebody wanted to, and what I liked about Fit, he was easy to talk to. And when he said, no, let's don't do that, he would give you a reason why you shouldn't do that. And the reason made sense. And unless this new talent hears this and learns to put a match together or pack a match with a lot of stuff, you have to have reasons why you do it here, and timing. That's what makes a match good. So, but he was a very, very good match producer and agent. And where is Fit right now? Is he
still producing? Still there, I think.
He's still in WWE, but he left for a while.
Yeah, he was fired for something to do with like somebody's theme music or like something that was meant to be patriotic, and it was, I don't know, it was in bad taste or the wrong time to do it, and for some reason, Fit was the one who got fired, so he ended up on the Indies for a couple of years, and then came back again. It was total overreaction, but
it was really.
Yeah.
See, they say, well, he got fired for drinking a Coke. What? Yeah, because 7-Up was a sponsor. So, it is stupid stuff. WWE is guilty of that in a lot of cases. Of course, they won't admit it. But I think now, since Triple H has taken over, we won't have those, really preposterous things that happen that you just can't believe. But now I think Triple H, new era, and I think they got a really good start on it.
I like that you said that Finlay would take you into for your matches as well, or Jack's matches, I should say.
Yeah.
Would you do that for your?
Well, he had us a couple times. Yeah, he took us in a ring, and he would look over at me and said, "Do you agree with this?" And I said, "Yeah." Hey, it's your match. You put it together how you want. But whatever he was doing was good. But see, not only is he putting it together to make it good, he's teaching talent how to do it. So you got to be here and you got to be here. And if the referee was involved, we get the referee in there. So we'd go over this match about, I don't know, it'd take 15 minutes, 20 minutes. But when they left, they had the match down. And they knew what they were going to do, knew how long they were going to go. And so you really need yourself, say, when you have run-ins or you have something behind the referee's back, something that has to be timed. If you walk through it, and it's what it was called a walkthrough. When you walk through it before the actual match, now the talent knows what's needed and how to do it and the time it needs to be done in. So they've already done it. Now all they got to do is replicate it.
I've never asked you this. Who were your favourite agents to work with during the Zeb Colter run? Or who were the easiest to work with?
Well, Tony Gurria was good because he didn't say nothing. Tony didn't do nothing. Tony go in there and he'd say, he'd tell Jack, you're with so-and-so in about 9 minutes. And you over, Jack over, whatever. But he wouldn't say how, because that is left up to the talent. Now, if they had a particular finish they wanted, they would say something then. But Tony would walk away. He's gone. And then he'd come back right when you go on air and he said, "What you got?" Because when during your match, he would have to go up to the go position and sit down and put the headphones on and talk to the truck while the match is going on. So, but he didn't have anything to do with, most of the time, putting the matches together. He would just give the finish, and that's the talent's job, to put it together. Only thing he would listen to is the finish, and if he signed off on it, that's what it was. Who were some other talents? Agents there.
Man, I can't remember at this point.
Oh, I had one. I can't remember his name.
Shane Helms, a talent? Maybe not.
He was just starting.
Yeah,
and he was very hands-on on the matches he handled. See, I was more involved with the writers. They would come to me, and somebody asked me, "What if you didn't want to do something?" I would say, "Hey, I don't think I need to say this. I don't need to," and they'd say, "This is what they would say. That's what Vince wants." And I went, "I don't think Vince wants this." I said, "Let's go ask him." "Oh, no, we don't have to ask him." Because they knew if we'd have went in there and I'm going to say, "He says, Vince, that you want it this way. Do you want it this way?" And Vince, "Well, I don't want it. Who said that?" So, see, they wrote an interview for me one time about the Constitution. I said, "Listen, Zeb Colter is a master on the Constitution. He could recite it forwards, and backwards. And he would not say that because that's not what it says. And that's when they said, well, Vince wants it that way. And when I started to say, I said, Vince wants Zeb Colter, who is a patriot and a We the People advocate, he wants him to act stupid while reciting the Declaration of Independence, which I couldn't believe. So they backed off on that pretty quick, but there were some things I just wouldn't say, because I said Zeb would not say this, because Zeb, at least when you talk about the Constitution, be correct with it. Mm-hmm. Don't be like he understands it this way or that way. No, there's only one way to understand it, and that's the way that Zeb was interpreting it. And so I wouldn't say it. I forgot what it was, but it was something stupid.
I've got a few more names for you. Jamie Noble and Joey Mercury, were they both producers during your time?
Joey Mercury wasn't, I don't think, but Jamie Noble was. And he was good. Now he's going to watch this, so let me say this. Jamie Noble was the shits. He couldn't put crap together. No, he was good. He really was.
I'm actually looking at producers who work today, so only a few of them will still be the same. Billy Kidman, he's been there for years doing that, hasn't he?
But yeah, Billy Kidman, he worked the
it says here he's
the go position.
Yeah, program coordinator. So would he be like with Bruce Pritchard or something now?
Oh, well, gorilla position. Okay, you have the agent sitting in the middle and a guy timing it. And what was the guy's name you was talking about?
Kidman.
I think he was he was getting the time together, and somebody else just making sure that, you know, he was following the lineup, and he was telling Odd, get so and so on standby, get them on deck. Because they tell you, if your match is coming up, stand by close by the go position. Because don't make us go look for you. Especially doing a live show. Don't make us go looking for you. Because, and who did I say that got fired right after his match on the go position? I told you that one time.
Yeah, but that wasn't the timing thing. That was Brad Maddox.
Oh, that's what that's what he said. Yeah. But he wasn't late, but he just wanted to run his mouth, and Vince fired him right on the spot. So he went out employed, came back unemployed.
Have him fired, pal. Right, let's move on. Dino D says, two people wrote basically the same question in for a very specific thing, which I thought was interesting. So I'll read them both out to you to a point. Dino D says, I was wondering if Dutch had any stories of the late Gordon Scozzari. Gordon Scozzari was a 21-year-old that had a promotion, American Wrestling Federation. Eddie Gilbert, who was hired to be the promotion's booker, decided not to appear despite being paid a $500 advance, and there's a shock, and provided with a return plane ticket. Pez Whatley and Dutch Mantell offered to assist Scozzari in the booking for the rest of the tapings. Thanks. So do you remember this?
Oh, yeah, I remember it.
Okay, tell me.
I think we were in Boston. And we went up, and Eddie was supposed to be the booker, and Eddie didn't show up. I wondered why. Because Eddie had a history sometimes of doing that. He would get mad at a booker. I mean, not a booker, but an owner. And all of a sudden, he just leave. He just sky up. And nobody knew where he went. And when he skied up, he was gone. So we went up there, and all of a sudden, I had never met Gordon Scozzari up to that point. He just booked me for the show, me and Pez was somewhere else, but we met up there. I thought he was much older than what he was. And it wasn't Boston, but it was, I think, somewhere in Massachusetts, I think. And Eddie didn't show up. So he asked me, he says, can you help me? And I think he asked Pez, or Pez volunteered. I said, yeah, we can get through it.
Chicago. Is that right?
No.
It says on the Wikipedia, AWF headquarters was in Chicago. That was
Well,
Paul
yeah.
Alperstein, though. Am I thinking of a different one?
No, you're thinking of a different one.
Okay, sorry.
We were somewhere in New England.
Right.
I remember that. But we stepped in and got the show done, and I was supposed to have a match, but I didn't really want to work that day. So I said, "Hey, let me help you do this." And he said, "Okay," and we got it done. And Eddie, why he didn't show up, never said, but wasn't unusual for Eddie though.
So, following on from this, so I'm hoping it's the same promotion anyway. Hey, Dutch and James, this is from Robert, by the way. I'm still loving the podcast. You two are the best. Thank you very much. During my time working for Chris Adams Promotions between 94 and 96, Chris signed on to wrestle for a brand new promotion in Chicago called American Wrestling Federation. Chris told us stories about it, and let's just say that he wasn't blown away by it. He didn't like the format, which was 4-round matches, and he felt that they didn't invest enough initial capital, especially in promoting it. It was apparent in the attendance that they were getting. Chris said that even though the roster had many well-known names, attendance was so low that they had to resort to using a rent-a-crowd service to create the appearance of a full house. Dutch, were you ever asked to work for this promotion? If not, I'd appreciate your thoughts on what you know about it, especially the use of the 4-round match format. So I'm hoping there's not two American Wrestling Federations getting confused here with Gordon Scozzari and Paul Alperstein.
I've heard about that other promotion in Chicago, and whether I worked for them or shot for them, I can't remember. I'm going to say no because I don't really remember it because I've been hit on the head a couple 100,000 times, so it may just escape me. The 4-round deal, I don't know how that's going to work. You got to break people in on that slowly because they're used to seeing pro wrestling and not used to seeing rounds. And that's like in MMA stuff. And when you try to change, it's like trying to change the story of a fairy tale. It takes a while. You may get the story changed the way you want it, but it takes a while to do that. And I think Chris Adams is promotion. How did that do in Texas? That didn't go either, did it?
No, I mean, nothing did really. I mean, especially the 94 to 96 one. I know there was a global wrestling federation that Adams appeared for earlier, and that died a death quite soon.
I think Jerry Jarrett had something to do with that.
I think one or two of the Von Erichs appeared for it in the early days. And I know that Adrian Street was on it early. I know Steve Austin was on it, I think, early as well.
Mm-hmm.
But
you know, the thing in Chicago, it didn't go, and I've been for a couple of companies up there in Chicago that bombed out. I mean, just totally bombed.
I know you've seen, because you've talked about commentator Kent Walton and World of Sport and stuff like that. I know you appreciate the British wrestling, but that was rounds, and I love the round system if it's done in a British style, in a technical style. It makes a lot more sense. I don't know if it works for American style at all, but I mean, the rounds can be great. They're just like loads of mini matches. I
like your words. It can be, but you got to know how to do it. How many rounds would they have? 3?
No, 6 or something like that. I think it depended on the match sometimes. Germany was the same. They had rounds.
And how long are the rounds?
3 minutes? 5 minutes? I think 3 minutes maybe, yeah.
I think 3. 5's too much to go.
Yeah.
To tell the story, because you can lose that story. But if the people are educated in rounds, yeah, you can really work some good stuff with that. But if they're not, it's completely foreign to an American fan to watch pro wrestling in rounds. You just don't get it. So can it be done? Yes. Can it be done overnight? No. It takes time.
Annoyingly, 2 people wrote in about 2 completely different American wrestling federations, and I thought they were the same one. So the first one ran from 91 to 92, and as you rightly said, it was based around Massachusetts. Lowell, Massachusetts, they held an early show, and Asbury Park, New Jersey, so it was around that way. So just to clarify, there were 2 completely separate American, it's like the UWF, there's like 8 of them. So I figure it's one of those things. Right, we shall move on. And Chris Legree has said, I noticed multiple territories had a brass knuckles championship. What was the meaning of these championships? Were they like hardcore titles? Hope you are doing well.
I've been around one of them, the brass knuckles champion. I never got it. I don't get it.
Well, what was it? I mean, what were the rules?
I don't know
if
what it
anything?
was, but I think it was just a title. I don't ever remember seeing a match call for the brass knucks title. Both guys putting brass knucks on and going, oh, no, they gonna believe that crap. I mean, he could go in with the title, but now you associate him with brass knucks, but he can't use them because they're illegal. But if he pulls them out, yeah, that might create something. But sometimes I think they try to make something out of nothing. And I never knew a brass knuck championship to draw a single dime. So I never liked it because it's asking the fan to stretch his imagination to the limit. Because one tap with the brass knucks, you should start bleeding and you should be knocked out.
Yeah, I don't know
unless
if like
you
there
can't
are
hit
different
a
rules.
guy.
I don't know if there are rules for it, like brass knuckles. Is it actually brass knuckles, or is it just a name, like punches are illegal or something, or something I need to look into, really? I know they had them in Dallas, I think, at one point. But
And it was stupid.
yeah.
I thought it was stupid.
We'll move on. Adam has written in with one of the most amusing questions we've ever had on this show. So thank you, Adam.
Really?
For this. Oh,
Really?
yes.
I want to see this.
Hey, James and Dutch. I'm a washed-up independent worker, and one time I was tagging with Al Snow. I took the heat and gave Al the hot tag. He ran in to bump the heels and then tried to shake some life into me. In the process, he diddled my butthole. Has Dutch ever experienced the booty finger or any other similar ribs in front of a live audience? Thanks.
That was one of Al's little tricks to wake you up. Believe me, if you get a little finger up the little anal chute, that would stir you awake. You go, whoa. That sounds just like Al. Yeah, I think Al's done that before because that was one of his things. I think that was one of the things he liked to do for some reason. That is a good question, but it's never happened to me. But I guess it happened to him. But you'll always remember that.
Yeah, the old phantom finger.
Oh yeah! Snow,
wow. Well, maybe not having been violated or anything like that. What were some of the things that some wrestlers would do that only you could feel or only you could see that would jar you in a match?
Well, when I was green, Assassin number 2, Jody Hamilton. I didn't have a lot of matches with him, but I went through this period, like a 2-week little period where I was booked against him. Of course, it was intended just to give him a win, put him on the card, give him a win. But I felt like crap when I come out of that ring because of what he would do. We went in the ring one night and he says, "Headlock, kid." So I took the headlock and I'm there and I'm walking around showing everybody I got the assassin in the headlock and take me over. Oh, God, that's even better. I give him the hip and over we go. And all of a sudden here the hand comes up on my back and he digs into that hair. He rips it all out. I said, God damn, what the hell? And then he'd put his hands on my chest and he would just yank. Oh my God. You talk about hurting. And then he would stand up and then he started getting heat on me, but he would rake my back and then take it and just pull a bunch of hair out. And he'd throw the hair away. People knew what he was doing because he had actual hair in his hands. Oh my God. But, and I've told the story here, I'll tell it again. I went by like a week or two, a day or two of that. So I went down to the drugstore and guess what I got?
Somas. No.
Nair. And I put it all over my back and all over my chest and took it all off. And he didn't notice it. We got in the ring. And so when he said, take the headlock, the old routine, pull me over. And then all of a sudden, I felt his hand on my back doing this, like, where's the hair? I said, yeah, outsmarted you. So I got him back on that. But he ended up beating the crap out of me. We're trying to outsmart him or outsmarting him. So
He's got to get it funny either way. We've got time for a few more, I think, actually. At least a couple. So Chris from Cherokee County, Georgia. He has sent us a video with the following message. We're not going to play the video, but he says, here, Dutch squashes the hell out of a poor jobber, Alan Martin, and smokes him with a sort of gourd buster. The match is fun and short, but I'm wondering about the history of squash matches. As far as Dutch knows, was this always a feature in promotions or a modern method to get talent over?
Oh, yeah, that's not a modern method. That's always been used. So when you want to, years ago, they didn't put those competitive matches on TV except for a main event because they wanted you to pay to see those. So if you had a competitive match on TV, it was a big deal, kind of. You're going to see a championship match on TV. You didn't see WWE, they'll do that every week. They'll put a title match on there. So going to the arena to see a title match wasn't a big deal. So when they put a title match on TV, it meant something. So to get them there, you know, the term jobber, which I like enhancement talent better. So they would put those enhancement talents out for talent for heels that they want to push. And he come out there and like they're doing Braun Breaker right now, he goes in there and he kills the guy in less than a minute. So, and that's what they would do then. They would just put a guy in. They did this with who was it? Magnum TA. They did that with him for like forever. Nobody went more than like a minute with him or 90 seconds, and they'd end up getting beat. And that's how they kept him over, got him over, kept him over. And it didn't really even hurt the job guy. It didn't really matter with him because he would be there maybe once, twice. Now, who it did help was the Monkeys. Remember the Monkey Brothers that couldn't win a match? Mm-hmm. That's where I got my idea about, hey, taking Jack Hart, Barry Horowitz, making him a loser. So I just turned it into an angle. It's not something I made up, but I did make up the angle that he can't win the match, and it got over. The Monkeys actually got over by losing, but it took a long time, but they got him over.
Do you think I'm sure there's room because they're doing it with Bron Breakker, Bronson Steiner, Rex Steiner at the moment, and people like it. Everyone likes it, for God's sake. I mean, is there far more room for squash matches where someone just gets killed over 2 minutes? Should that just be a more permanent fixture on wrestling TV?
No, I think that every now and then you can use it, but if you try to use it every show or use it too much, I think if you have one guy doing it, then the next guy, he starts doing it, and you go, wait a minute, these matches are too short. They got to fill this time. So unless the guy is one hell of a talker and you got an angle set up to fill the time, you got to watch yourself. It's like everything else in moderation. You do it in moderation, you can get it over. Now, when this Braun Breaker thing runs its course, they won't bring that back for a while, maybe a year or two. But see, the ones that have seen Braun Breaker, now they will see the similarities between one guy beating this guy in 30 seconds and another guy beating another guy in 30 seconds. So you kind of know how it's going to go. It can happen, but I think if you use that in moderation, it works. It'll work for Braun Breaker right now.
I think we'll do two more because there's one question I want to get to that more than one person wrote in again to ask your opinion. So Sparson, this isn't it. We'll save that to last. Sparson says Paul Jones was a big star in Mid-Atlantic when I was a kid. Then he went into the goofy managing bit. But how's he viewed among fellow wrestlers? Any good stories about him?
Well, I do know that he was a hell of a babyface in Mid-Atlantic. And then, and I forgot, because what they did, but I was getting out of the Army, or I didn't keep up with the show because I wasn't there. I was getting shot at. So, but then they turned him into, I don't know how they made him a heel. And then they turned him into a manager. And he was a good babyface. He was over too. There was three baby faces who were notorious with Mid-Atlantic wrestling. George Becker, Johnny Weaver, and Paul Jones. And they've had more, I'm sure, but that was years and years and years ago. So when they made him a manager, he got over, and he would manage. I forgot even who he managed now because I was not paying attention.
Oh, there was loads like Pez Watley and Manny Fernandez and Barbarian and people like that, all trying to get to Boogie Woogie Man Jimmy Valiant.
So Paul Jones is so his big rivalry was a Handsome Jimmy, right?
Oh, for years, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Paul Jones Army in the 80s. I think he was still feuding with Jimmy. Don't know if he was, probably feuding with Jimmy in '86 when you were with Mid-Atlantic, when he had the Hitler mustache and the whole bit.
I'm trying to remember, but he did have heat with those people, and they did the story right. They took their time with it. And do I have any good stories about him? I heard he was a hell of a ladies' man.
Paul Jones with a Hitler mustache.
Oh yeah, women loved him. He would go out doing the first match going on. Where's Paul? And somebody would go. That meant like he's outside at his car. They'd go looking for him, and they'd know where to find him. And a lot of times they found him he was accompanied by a female, and he'd brush her off, and he'd come back in and go to work.
That old sly dog. Didn't know he had it in him. Do you know who he was trained by? I'm just reading this up here.
Paul Jones?
Paul Jones. Who was he trained by?
I have no idea.
Paul Bosch and Morris Siegel.
Yeah, Houston.
Yeah.
They were promoters and co-promoters of Houston.
Mm-hmm. So there you go. He, debuted in 1961, it says. Okay, so we're going to sadly skip a couple of questions because I want to end it on this. Spencer Yates wrote in, so did Brian Turner, and so did somebody else, all asking the same thing. So I imagine some videos come out to get people's mind thinking about it. So Spencer writes in, hello, Dutch and James. I've recently found a version of Georgia Championship Wrestling I never knew about. A TV show called Georgia Championship Wrestling Superstars was on in the summer of 1983. And you, Dutch, not me, were on the show during a run-in on Bill Dundee. The show seemed to be very, very low budget and in front of about 12 people. A very young Jim Cornette was also on the show. What can you tell us about this strange version of GCW? Who owned it? Who booked it? Was this Jerry Jarrett trying to move in on Ole? And who did you piss off to end up on this show?
No, what it was, they tried to, I think it was out of Knoxville, and Joe Pedicino. Is Joe Pedicino involved in this show? Do they mention him?
Doesn't mention it in this. I'll look into it, Karen. I thought that might be a bit old for Joe Pedicino.
No, 83. I remember doing something for Atlanta, but it was done out of Knoxville. The tape was done out of Knoxville because when he said it was a lowly attended TV taping, like 12, 15 people. Yeah, it reminds me of the studio in Knoxville. And And all they were doing was putting tapes together. It didn't matter how many people was in the crowd. They weren't using, they were trying to syndicate the show instead of trying to draw money on live events and doing pay-per-views, which were like just coming into its own right then. But they didn't run any live events. It was just for TV. And I think Joe Pedicino was running it, and he put it on in Atlanta, but that was a tape from Knoxville. And how I ended up on there, I think they asked for me, and the pay was pretty decent. It was more than what I was making. And I would go over there and I'd stay a day or two, and then I was living in Nashville, and I would go to Knoxville and we would do a show. It didn't make sense to me then, but hey, they were doing it. So I was just over there working.
I'm trying to look up more information while we talk about this as well. There's not very much information out of it, which is why I guess people were writing in. So there were no house shows whatsoever. So who was actually running this then? So was it Ole? Was this Ole's idea?
No, I think that I don't think Ole had anything to do with it. I don't think the Georgia Wrestling Company had anything to do with it. It was just aired in Atlanta. It was a TV show in Atlanta, and they just took the name Georgia what? Championship Wrestling.
Well, it says Georgia Championship Wrestling Superstars. So I thought, well, maybe I'm entirely wrong here. I'd figured that it was like a splinter group off of Ole's TV show, but then if there's Memphis guys on it as well, it's very confusing.
I'm trying to remember. I do remember we ran Knoxville.
Chattanooga, I've seen here.
I don't remember running Chattanooga. I remember they ran Knoxville, and they took that tape and I guess they spliced it. I don't know what they did. See, a lot of times they do things that the talent, they're not privy to. You don't know exactly what they're doing, but we never ran Atlanta. We ran. They did run Chattanooga. I remember that to nobody again.
I'm just looking up here. It says World Championship Wrestling presents.
Oh, I tell you what it was.
Okay.
I think it was a promoter out of Columbus, Georgia. Fred Ward. I'm trying to remember. Fred Ward and his son-in-law. And I think, I don't know. Hey, it was only alive for 6 weeks.
This fella on some random forum just says World Championship Wrestling presents Georgia Championship Wrestling Superstars with TV tapes in Chattanooga, maybe. AKA that few weeks, Ole Anderson and Jerry Jarrett tried to work together. So maybe it was a collaboration with those two.
I think it was. Jerry Jarrett did have something to do with it because that's why I was there.
Who booked it?
Jerry.
Was it Dundee who was booking it?
I think Dundee was booking it. Again, I'm lost.
No, any other memories from this thing? Because this is a promotion of some fascination.
I'm glad when it folded.
I think this is a Jim Cornette one, isn't it? Were you forced to be there? Basically, Jarrett told you, go,
yes,
deal with it.
I was. Well, I could have probably refused, and that meant that I was off on Saturday on the Memphis show, which meant that any slot I would have on Memphis was without an angle. So that went a while, and I said, well, this is not benefiting me. It might benefit them, and I wasn't making that much money, more money than I would have made over there. So even not being used, but it lasted about 6 weeks.
There's on this little forum as well, Wrestling Classics, there's a card that's been written down here, so maybe this might jog your memory. Brett Wayne and Bill versus Bill Rose. The fantastic ones, which I looked up, was Terry Taylor and Bobby Fulton, I think, defeating Carl Fergie and Norman Frederick Charles III, which I've not heard that name in a while. The Angel and the Bounty Hunter versus Ray Candy and Joe Lightfoot. For the Stray Cat beat Larry Hare, and in the main event, Bill Dundee beats Steve O. Any of those names?
No, I know the people.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to place that, but I do remember Terry Taylor, and who was his partner?
Bobby Fulton in this.
Bobby Fulton. That must have been after the Fantastics.
I'll tell you what, Cornette won't reply, but Bobby Fulton might. So you'll have to get involved with Bobby and see if you can dig up some more information, see what he says.
Okay.
Okay? All right.
All right.
On that note, we're going to close down this show. So
no more questions?
No, we're done. Hour's up.
We didn't do an hour.
We've done an hour, I promise you.
Son of a gun.
I know, I'll tell you. The time... You said that on the last show as well.
Yeah. That guy you said, the New Zealand guy, Norman Frederick.
Charles III.
Yeah. Good guy. And when he got out arrested, I never saw him again. I guess he went back to New Zealand.
Do you want me to try and find out for you before we...
Yeah.
Okay.
Do the people know who we're talking about? He was
Norman Frederick Charles III.
He was one of the original... He wasn't one of the original bushwhackers.
No, kangaroos.
What would they call the
fabulous
kangaroos? They weren't the original kangaroos, though.
No, wasn't there like one were they in the 40s or 50s?
That was in the 60s, I think.
No, I mean the original ones.
I still think in the 60s.
Okay.
Because Don Kent was one of them one time.
Hang on, right. So Don, I'll forget it. Let's stick to one kangaroo at a time. So he would team with... Who the heck would he team with?
Who was the leader?
Jonathan Boyd.
That's later.
So that's a later one.
Yes, he is a later one.
There you go. There's no information of what he did after wrestling, although he did have a good run in Stampede, it says. So there you go. He remained with Stampede.
Who was the original? Costello was one of the original kangaroos, correct?
Royal Kangaroos. Give us a second. I'll do my best to find it. So there's the Royal Kangaroos, and then there's the Fabulous Kangaroos. So the Royal Kangaroos are the original. No, are they? Who are the Fabulous Kangaroos then? Jesus wept. 1957 until 1983, because it was... God, there were loads of them. Al Costello, Roy Heffernan, Ray St. Clair, Don Kent, as you said, Tony Charles, Bruno Becker, and Johnny Heffernan. They were all Royal Kangaroos at one time or another.
Well, Costello and who was the other guy with him?
Al Costello and Roy Heffernan.
Yeah, they were the originals.
Yeah. Who was Wild Red Berry was the manager?
And Wild Redberry, yeah, he came along later. And he got a lot of heat in Texas, Wild Redberry. So
right, on that, I'm hungry. The thing I always say when I want to wrap up one of these things, I'm getting hungry. So we're going to wrap it up. Thank you, everybody, for watching. We'll be back on Friday for Storytime with Dutch Mantell. questionsfordutch@gmail.com if you want your question answered, or at least attempted to be answered, like the last one. It was a long time ago. We need to figure that out with Bobby Fulton. I'm sure he'll remember.
We're going to research that.
We are going to research that. Bobby, reach out, or Dutch, you reach out to Bobby and see what he says. But for now, thank you for watching. We'll see you again on Friday. And Dutch, we the people.
We the people. See you then.